The show has not been sponsored by anyone yet, but I have been asked to make this announcement as a white guy to make things sound more official.
Hello. Welcome to the third episode of my podcast, The Culinary Leap, where I talk about my journey from how I'm currently trying to leap from my corporate job to a life surrounded by food. Today I want to talk about the Thanksgiving dinner menu in detail, to walk you through the flavor pairings and the thoughts behind each dish. And I also wanted to share where my love for Thanksgiving food comes from. But before I get into that, my next dinner is going to be Christmas themed on December 6th, which is already sold out. So great news. And it's going to have a lot of Christmas and celebratory themes. And although we don't celebrate Christmas in Bangladesh, I grew up watching a lot of Christmas movies, the Hollywood classics like Home Alone and Grinch. They were some of my favorites, so I just absolutely love this time of year. And my first proper Christmas was in London, where I got my bachelor's, and the lights, the decorations with the music and Oxford Circus, and oh my gosh, this song by Coldplay called Christmas Lights. I listened to it on the bus rides there, just so beautiful and emotional and sweet. It's not your average loud Christmas happy song, but it just touches your heart. So that memory, it all went really well together for me, and they were beautiful experiences. Even though I didn't have money to spend on a lot of those flashy things that were visually so appealing, it just created this beautiful vibe for me with the music. And today I'm just happy right now to be in this time of year talking about the festive season. And now I get to explore my creativity with food around this holiday season. So it's absolutely wonderful, and it makes me really happy. So going back to Thanksgiving, which is another favorite time of year for me since I moved to America, I remember my first Thanksgiving, and I didn't know much about it as much as I did about Christmas back from Bangladesh or from UK, but I knew that it was all about food. And the first year in America, I was working at Walmart because I couldn't find a proper job while I was really prepping for my next step. Like, what do I do? Do I get a master's? Do I keep trying to find another job? Do I just try to climb the corporate ladder at Walmart? And the Walmart I worked at was in a small town called Waldorf, Maryland. And it was absolutely insane. I was in the electronics section, so I had a Thanksgiving shift, and it was my second month at Walmart. And keep in mind, I did have part-time jobs in the UK, but I didn't work as much because I was honestly really privileged that my dad, although it took a lot for him, he wanted me to focus on my studies. So he did what he could to make ends meet, to make sure I could focus on that. So I had a lot of support from my family to really do all that, but that meant I also didn't have a lot of exposure to working in a lot of part-time jobs for a long time anyway. So back to my time at Walmart, I remember these long shifts. My feet would kill me. And then the weeks leading up to Thanksgiving was crazier for the sales. And being in electronics, you can imagine how it is for Thanksgiving. The sales are the best at Walmart, and it's also a fairly middle-class city in Waldorf, so the Walmart was very, very busy. And it was just absolute mayhem. And we had our own checkout counter back in the electronics section. My scanner broke, and there was this huge line ready to just eat me up alive. You know, like, how dare you break the scanner? Like, I did it intentionally. So I didn't break the scanner, I promise. It was just one of the worst memories of my life. And that night, it was Thanksgiving, and I finished my shift around 10:30 p.m. or so, and it was just so ready to get out. And it was way past when a normal Thanksgiving dinner should be served. So my shift ends. My cousin, who was visiting from Australia, picks me up, and she grew up in Waldorf. So she picked me up, took me to their house where my aunt lives, and we had my first Thanksgiving dinner together, and it was absolutely delicious. It wasn't even all warmed up because I had to heat things up again. It wasn't even the best version of what was cooked, but even that leftover version of the Thanksgiving meal was mind-bogglingly delicious to me. I remember clearly like what those items were. There was scalloped potatoes, they were like creamy, cheesy, and then there was mashed potatoes. I remember it wasn't the best mashed potatoes. I honestly make a really good mashed potato now with some ghee, whipped cream, and some truffle cream. And it's really delicious and so smooth. So I remember that mashed potato, and I think I make it better now, but it was still delicious. And there were biscuits, gravy. I had turkey too, of course. This crispy skin and the lean parts were my favorite. I remember the breast was a little dry, and sweet potatoes. Oh my gosh, sweet potatoes. I remember there was also this apple pie crumble that my cousin bought some Cool Whip for, and we just had that together, which was absolutely delicious too. I'm not a big fan of sickly sweet pies either, but the combination of that Cool Whip with the really good quality apple pie was top notch. And I shouldn't forget the cranberry jelly. I think that's a very controversial thing in America. A lot of people cook their own cranberry jams from scratch, so they're kind of looking down on the jellies from a can, but it was my first time having it, and it was really neatly cut by my aunt too. I don't know, it just looked like really beautiful red ruby jewels, and the texture of the jelly just went really well with everything else, like the crusty, creamy scalloped potatoes. So I thought it was nice. Not that I made it for my dinner, obviously. And then there were some greens too, like broccolini, asparagus. So, while I ate this meal, every bite was different. Every combination was different. And that was exciting for me. And what I wanted to do with this menu I cooked on Friday was really replicate that beautiful dinner that my cousin and aunt cooked for us, and every Thanksgiving dinner my mom cooked after that. Like, I really wanted to celebrate all those different bites I like in a Thanksgiving dinner. And so I knew that I needed to have scalloped potatoes. I needed to have sweet potatoes. I needed to have biscuits. I needed to have something green. I needed to have something cranberry. And I just wanted it to be delicious. But I also wanted to maintain the tasting menu. And I wanted to not just serve each dish without really connecting to each other. And that's why I really wanted to think about, okay, what bites and combinations of Thanksgiving dinners do I like the best? And how do I replicate a feast in a tasting menu? And then the final challenge is, how do I add my Bangladeshi flair to it? So that's what led me to serving the Cranberry Achaar, which is basically cranberries, boiled, reduced down with some sugar, a little bit of salt, Bengali 5 spices, which we call pach foron. It's 5 spices like cumin, jeera, clove, cinnamon, cardamom, bay leaves, and of course the usual, these are the spices we usually use for achar. And as for the tartness, we normally use tamarind pulp, but I skipped that because I wanted to maintain that beautiful cranberry color. And the tartness of the cranberries honestly amped it up enough. And I also added a bit of lemon juice squeeze, so that helps retain the flavor, but also adds that kind of sourness to it that achars need. So achar exists in many forms, around the world, including India and Africa. And how I would define a Bangladeshi achar is basically a condiment that uses pickled fruits or veggies, and the texture should be soft from the fruit, and the mustard seed just pops in your mouth when you bite into it. It shouldn't be a smooth puree. It shouldn't have solid, uncooked, solid chunks of fruit in it. And I think pach foron is a must for all our achars. It is usually what adds that distinct spice flavor. And sometimes the mustard oil helps amp that up as well. And it's usually sweet, sour, tart, dark, spicy. My mom does make this version with Indian olives, and she doesn't add sweetness to it. She covers it in mustard oil, and that goes really well with beef curry, chicken curry, or just white Polao and dal. And I also have had this Naga Morish achar, and that's like a probably one of the spiciest peppers in the world that's grown in Bangladesh. So it's a very hot achar, but it's definitely very fragrant, delicious. So spicy. So delicious. My mouth's watering. So how do we eat achar? It's a very strong flavor, right? So you want to mix a little bit of it with everything you eat. So the cranberry condiment I made from scratch was to have with other items. And I also made a cranberry syrup, which I have a video of on my social media. I served that with the potatoes 2 ways. And this is where my first Thanksgiving bite comes in, where you have some cheesy scalloped potatoes with some mashed potatoes and cranberry. And the mashed potatoes I served came in the form of Aloor Chop, which is basically I mash the potatoes, add a lot of ghee and some salt, and cover it in this homemade crumb coating I made with toast biscuit from Bangladesh. So toast biscuit is a really dry form of biscuit that makes the breadcrumbs for coating fried foods, and it's different to the store-bought breadcrumbs because it has its own texture. It's kind of like a thin layer of delicate crispness, and it's not crunchy, if that makes sense. And I learned this from my mom, and she usually doesn't sieve the potatoes that we mash, but I sieved it so it's extra smooth, so it melts in your mouth with that thin light crust and that delicate crisp, and not crunchy, it's just crispy. And then the scalloped potatoes, I sliced the potatoes about 3 centimeter in thickness to retain some bite, parboiled them, layered with salt, butter, Gruyere cheese, shredded between each layer, and I made little handheld cups of these, baked in the oven at a very high temperature. And then to finish these 2 potato dishes off, I drizzled them in this truffle bay leaf cream sauce, and then put some dots of the cranberry syrup on the bay leaf cream sauce. I think that was one of the best dishes I've ever made at a dinner party, which I'm extremely proud of. And it did replicate the bite I was trying to recreate from my Thanksgiving dinner. The second bite I wanted to replicate was turkey, biscuits, and cranberry. So the cranberry achaar is already at the table at this point. And when it comes to biscuits, I think the best biscuit I've ever had was in DC at this place called St. Anselm's. If you're ever around DC, please try it out. They have these layers between each biscuit. Between each layer, it's like a buttery, flaky layer, and it's golden brown on the outside. They're perfectly square. They rise really well, making them almost like a cube. So I wanted to replicate those biscuits, and I wanted to make them from scratch because I know there are mixes you can buy from the stores. They can be good too, but they're not as good as a freshly made biscuit. So I did 2 tries of this. One was a week before the dinner, and the second try was right for the dinner. And if I say so myself, it turned out pretty good for the second time. I definitely need to do more tweaks to make it get to that level at St. Anselm's, where I wanted it to be high enough. The quality of the flakes, the texture, the rise, everything should be better. But everyone did still love the biscuits as they were. I got compliments like it was the best biscuits they've ever had. And it's funny because everyone knows about the Red Lobster cheddar biscuits. Like, it's a thing. And one guest was like, I always ask for more if I ever go there. And I would say your biscuits are better than that. So I consider that as a compliment for something I've only baked twice. Gives me confidence that I know what I'm doing. I have a good instinct and skill set for a lot of the things in food. And a guest also asked me, would you say, are you more of a pastry chef or a cook? And I loved that question because it made me think. And I think I want to say both because I really am good with following recipes, being technical, and that's what pastry chefs need to be. But I also understand the true essence of cooking, where you don't necessarily have recipes and have to rely on instincts on how to season or how long to cook something for. But if I had to pick one, I would pick cook because I think there is a wider range of everything I want to do in being a cook. But I do think you need to be a good pastry chef to really create those layers and textures and desserts for a good menu. So yeah, back to the menu. With the biscuits, I served a shredded pulled turkey curry with a crispy turkey skin on top. And this is the first time I also broke down a full turkey. I definitely didn't want to serve a whole turkey roast to the dinner. First of all, it's a tasting menu, so I wanted to not make it banquet style. I wanted everyone to have their individual portions, and I found out through breaking down the turkey that the majority of the meat comes from the breast. So it can be very dry, and pulling it and drenching it in the curry sauce was just a good idea. And it could be more moist, I think, in the future. I think adding more of the leg meat, more of the gravy would help with that. But I think the flavors turned out really good. And for the flavors, for the gravy too, I created my own turkey curry gravy with the bones, frying them off in the pan with a lot of different spices. Making it Bangladeshi was obviously key to the Thanksgiving dinner. That was the biggest Bangladeshi influence on the menu, adding the gorom moshla, which is this ground cinnamon, cardamom, coriander, bay leaf, cloves, cumin, all ground up, toasting that, adding the dry red chilies, adding fresh chilies, turmeric, a little bit of ghee. Think I'm going to miss something because there were a lot of ingredients to build up those flavors, just to, bring back those whole spices back to life that I put in the garam moshla. I added the whole spices in as well. So then I finished it off with a little bit of vinegar, sugar, to make a darker, more caramelized flavor while I'm roasting up the bones. And that just, made this delicious meat dripping that came out of the bones into this beautiful curry gravy. And that's what I served with the turkey. And I also served Polao because I wanted people to be able to drench the rice with the curry sauce and eat it with the pulled turkey. So the Polao had spices too, but when I say spice, I want you to really imagine the slightly fragrant rice with some buttery notes to it because I fry my onions before I add the rice and caramelize it. Then I toast the rice in some cinnamon, cloves, cardamom, bay leaves again. And that adds this wonderful, beautiful fragrance to the rice. Spice doesn't always mean in your face or hot. And there are a lot of Bangladeshi dishes that only utilize the subtle smells that come from whole spices rather than the loud turmeric or garam masala or dry ground red chili peppers. But we have those loud flavors too. We have it all. So, yeah. So anyway, when it comes to rice though, not just the flavors, I think the texture is also very important. And I hate lumpy, clumpy rice, so I know some people like my dad do, but I think every grain should be separate. And the rice I used, and I usually will use for my food, is either kali jira, which is a Bengali grain, or chini gura, which is also Bangladeshi. And both of these are very short, shorter than basmati rice. I like basmati just for white rice, but for this type of pulao or any celebratory rice dish, I always use chini gura or kali jira. And the texture is perfect for me. They're separate and fluffy. And those caramelized onions and ghee, just before I take off the lid, I add those. So when I take the lid off at the table, the smell kind of hits everyone, the guests. And so the last dish I served on Friday was a dessert, which is Bangladeshi bread pudding called Shahi Tukura. It's also very popular in Pakistan, in India. I have my own twist to it. So for the Thanksgiving flavor, I added the sweet potato halwa between the two pieces of bread. And to make this halwa, I caramelized it in ghee, brown sugar for hours for the sweet potato to be really observant of the caramelized flavors and have this rich taste to it. And as for the two pieces of bread, which I sandwiched the halwa between, the thick slices of brioche were deep fried, one layer in ghee, dusted in brown sugar, and soaked in milk cream overnight, so it really gets infused with that milk cream and cardamom flavor. And the other layer I kept crispy and only soaked it right before the dinner so that it adds some crispness to the dish. So it's not just that soft, fluffy, cream-infused bread. There's some crispness to it as well. And like I mentioned, the sweet potato halwa would add more sweetness. So balancing the sweetness is extremely important. I hate when my desserts or anyone's desserts are sickly sweet. And the toasted almonds on top help with relieving some of that sweetness as well. And as for the drink, I served an apple pie teeny, which is my own concoction. It's a apple pie flavor that I'm trying to recreate in a drink, thinking about the caramelized apples in pie. I really try to bring apple juice to life by adding those warm spices like cinnamon, cardamom, cloves. Again, you'll hear a lot of these same spices across the board. And then I basically reduce that down and add brown sugar to it, as well as some molasses, which we call gur in Bangladesh. And for the alcoholic version, I either add some golden rum or some vodka to it. And I think rum usually adds a richer, caramelly, and darker tone to the drink. So I think I'll stick to rum from now on, although I did serve vodka in the last one. And for the rim, to really make it an apple pie, to complete the picture, I add a crust, which is made out of a baked feuilletine crisped up in brown sugar that I baked myself, and also add some ground cinnamon to it. So when you're drinking and taking a sip, it makes you feel like you're drinking apple pie. And next time I think I might add some caramel sauce to the rim. I don't want to make it a dessert per se, but I want it to really be an apple pie when you're drinking it. Also on preparation this time, what I noticed myself realizing and getting smarter at is picking items from menu that I can make ahead of time instead of leaving a lot of components to be fried and baked right before dinner. This is getting me into the right mentality for a restaurant during service, and how many things need to be prepped ahead of time, how many things and what needs to be made fresh during service. So the next few days I'll be preparing for the December 6th menu. The menu will be published in a few days, so watch out for it on my social media, my website. And the next one after that is January 3rd, which will celebrate flavors. We get back in Bangladesh in January. It's still going to be almost winter in both America and in Bangladesh around this time. So I really want to bring in the winter flavors that we enjoy, like cauliflower, or dishes that really warm your soul, like the dark, rich duck curry we make, or pita, which is a very, very big genre of cookies and cakes in Bangladeshi food. It can be sweet, savory, mostly sweet, and almost all pitas are made with rice flour, so it's also gluten-free, which is great for gluten-free folks. So I can't wait for the next two dinners. The December menu is sold out, which is great, but the January date still has some slots if you want to come. I really want you folks to try my food, share it with your friends, family. Let them know, because the more dinners I can cram in before my restaurant venture next year, the more feedback I'll get, the more experience I'll get. It's also helping me raise some of the funds I've been making for the restaurant. And the last thing is, if anyone out there is looking to invest in a food business, please talk to me. I'm raising funds for my business. I can share my business plan and we can exchange ideas. I'm looking for a partner who believes in me, and I'm looking for a strong partnership as well. So this idea has legs. I just need someone to help me make it fly. So yeah, thanks for listening, and reach out and keep in touch.